to a dynamic personality who has a repertoire across many disciplines. We are here with Christoph Glaser today. Hello and welcome to the show, Christoph. So nice of you to give us some time. Christoph is working in several fields and he'll tell us more about his work. Christoph, on to you.
Amita, thank you so much for inviting me. Nice to be here and talk to you.
Shall we begin with your days at the bank?
These days are far away. I'm today 53. Amita, this was when I was 16. I wanted to become a soccer professional. This was my big dream and passion. That's when I felt alive on the soccer field. And so professional journeys seemed to be less important. So my father said, why don't you go as a Swiss, work on a bank. I did an apprenticeship, and these were those days.
So why did you give up football?
It's not that I gave up football. Football gave up on me. But that's connected to what I do today. I had an accident when I was 17 on the soccer field. Really, my back cracked. They took me to the hospital. I was lying there. They did all the examinations, and they told me, Christoph, you can be lucky if you can walk again, but soccer no more. It was tough. It was literally like walking against the wall mentally. It was the physical pain, the mental pain, giving up the dream, reinventing myself. But it laid the foundation for me to really ask the question, who am I? How does this body work? How does the mind work? How do they both work together? And this fascination of life as it is has never left me since. So
how long did it take to heal, and what was the journey of that trauma like?
I think the biggest journey was that letting go. And if we look at the word resilience, and I work a lot on that with many clients around the world, resilience is the ability to let go, to stand up when you fall, but also it has to do with kind of bouncing, not just back, it's bouncing forward. I think that idea of something painful has happened and I want to have the same life back as it was is sometimes more part of the problem than the solution, because I had to let go. It would never come back. But finding myself in that new reality, I think, was the hardest.
And I think that's when it hits upon us, because I've gone through a different kind of trauma. What hits upon us is option A, with which we have been raised and have dreamt for years, is suddenly not there.
That's right.
And then you look at option B and you make the best of option B.
Yeah, and many times, at least...
And then you realize option B was meant to be.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think when something painful happens, and I think pain is part of this life for all of us. Even the birth for the mother is painful, even the baby cries. I think whether we make it a suffering, that's what is our choice. And letting go is one aspect that can make us transcend and go through the pain and then discover what's behind it. I'm coming from a Christian tradition, Amita, and the sign of Jesus at the cross for me is also a symbol that behind the pain there is the love. There is many a times the wisdom, and if we can embrace life as it is, I think it's powerful.
And it also then makes you more aware to the doors that are opening. Because if your sight is on the closed door for too much time, you're missing out so much new.
That's right.
Because we always say when one door shuts, 100 open. At least that's how I feel.
Yes.
But then it's on us to be aware.
That's right, and more easier said than done. I mean, if you're 17 and you were close to your professional career, and that's when I also felt alive. You kind of, and I think it's also important to kind of figure out, is that really the end? What are the opportunities to give your 100%? And only if you give your 100% in rehab, then also you know that when you let go, it's really for good. And I had to go through that experience, but it taught me a lot. And I think it taught me to embrace life in a more fuller way. But also it taught me how the mind and the body works.
Yes. Incredible to start with pain and suffering. Just incredible. Did you have to completely give up football?
Yes. It was tough. I mean, for the next 5-6 months I would...
No, I'm saying as of now you have...
As of now, it was... let's say, the professional career, I was in our youth, in many youth teams. We were national champion with my soccer team, so it was
Oh.
something quite real and tangible. That, of course,
Didn't happen
would
again.
not happen. And for the next 3, 4, 5 years, I had a lot of pain. I can say now, looking back, that sometimes I felt, and I told my family also, I don't think I will become older than 30 years, because I just couldn't take that pain. I couldn't see myself living with that.
With that.
But then, when I was little, like at the age of 22, something quite interesting happened. I grew up in a Swiss small village in Switzerland, Bottmingen, known because Roger Federer, the great, also grew up in that small village, grew up just a couple of 100 meters from me. But that's where the parallels end. But when I was 22, my best friend, and she was from India, she told me that, Christoph, something very interesting but also strange is happening. Tomorrow there is a yogi coming to my house. And we were both wondering, in absence of Google at that time or ChatGPT, what is a yogi? And I asked her, what is a yogi? She didn't know, I didn't know. But as it stands, it was the young Gurudev Sri Sri Ravi Shankar.
So you met him when you were 22, that
Yes,
young.
yes. And he actually happened, what I did not know, and I found out that the mother of my best friend, she was the first trainer in the art of living in Switzerland, so he came to stay. And that's how I learned the breathing techniques, the meditation, and that really changed the way I felt about myself. It helped to relax from within, when I was doing so much physiotherapy and to strengthen my back, but then everything in me tightened up. That's what you do when you strengthen your muscles. But something started to relax from within. And
letting go became possible.
letting go, exactly, that became possible. And I had a sense of self-efficacy. I had a sense of I can do something about my well-being, and that changed really the game of life for me.
Totally. Once you start understanding that I am back in control of what I want to do, where I want to go, I think 50% of the problem is gone. 50% of the suffering is gone.
Yeah, and I think none of us, we are really fully in control, but just the sense I can influence is already good. And indeed, like that sense of helplessness is probably
the most terrible thing to live with.
And I think if we fast forward in today's day and age, I would think that's one of the problems of our time, right? We all live in a turbulent world where on a daily basis, when we watch the news, and most of it is negative, we reflect on the wars in the world, we reflect on the economic crisis, we reflect on the fact that the artificial intelligence is changing the way we live, and that outside-in perceived negativity can create a helplessness because not much of it I can really influence. And then we become less resilient, less strong, and our whole nervous system tells us, well, why should I worry, or why should I give my 100% anyway? I can't change it. And that's not a good place to be.
I'm going to talk to you about what you do with the corporate sector leadership.
Yeah.
So if I have understood correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, when you coach them, first tell me more about what you coach them.
I'm the CEO of what is called the TLEX Institute, which is being created on the inspiration of Gurudev Sri Sri Ravi Shankar. TLEX stands for Transformational Leadership, and that's a leadership that works to inspiration, right? If leadership is about mobilizing a group of people, diverse group of people to achieve a common goal, then we ask the question, how? And there, of course, outside influencing factors. Motivation typically is something which comes from outside, right? The carrot or the stick makes us move. But inspiration is something which comes from within.
And that's what's required in the long run.
Yeah.
If you're not inspired, you can give up easily. Yeah. I always tell my students, external motivation may be marks, but internal motivation is to be learning just for the sake of learning.
That's right. And interestingly, the word inspiration comes from the Latin inspirare, to breathe in. And that, I would say, reminds us of the fact that there's no thirst of enthusiasm in all of us. But sometimes we can't feel it. Like, not always there is sun.
The chakras are blocked.
Yeah, and there is day and night, right? Not always we can see the sun, but it's always there. Sometimes it's cloudy. Like that, we cannot always connect to that inner wealth. but how to is exactly the mission of our TLEX Institute. So we love and are passionate about helping people and organizations to be the best version of themselves by connecting to that energy within, in a group, in an individual. And there the breath plays an important role, but there's many other components as well.
Tell me more about the other components. Because I know the Sudarshan Kriya is
Yes.
a great tool
Yes.
already in place.
I would say, nevertheless, the breath is the most direct way to manage
Change.
ourselves. Because see, probably neither you or me can manage, and none of us now watching or listening to this podcast can manage the mind from the level of the mind. Let's say, have you ever had a sleepless night? Probably, right?
Of course.
We all have. And then we tell ourselves, because it is late, I have to sleep, and it doesn't work. I cannot manage the mind from the level of the mind. And most of what is really is a fear stress, we need to manage more through a somatic approach, right? Somatic means through the body or through the breath.
Breath.
And the breath is the most direct way to manage our autonomic nervous system, right? So one part of our nervous system, you and me, we can manage consciously. I can decide to wave at our audience and my hand went up. But if I'm now nervous and my heart is beating too fast, however much I want to influence my heart, it won't listen, right? All the most important internal organs, my digestion, etc., the liver, etc., works on its own. Thanks God. Imagine we would have to manage that. But if we are out of balance, how do we influence? And there the breath
Because
comes to
the
the help.
mind is speeding ahead and the connection with the body is lost.
Exactly, yes.
You
Yes.
use the mind too much.
Yes, yeah, and
At times.
what really matters is our nervous system, obviously, and the breath is a direct link. So there's two parts to our nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system helps us to reduce, right?
The stress.
And the sympathetic nervous system helps us to get mobilized, to kind of perform. And so the breath, there are breathing techniques who can do both. They can make us calm, to recharge, to digest, to regain our energy, and there are techniques
And
which help
refresh
us.
the mind.
Yeah, exactly.
So my next question is, you go to these corporate heads who are highly successful, overachievers,
Yeah.
very high on ambition. And then how is it a challenge to make them slow down? Because that's exactly what they need, but they may not perceive that as a need.
Yes.
They would hardly have time to breathe, as the
That's right.
famous way
Yeah.
we put it, I don't even have time to breathe. So isn't that a challenge first to convince them you need this?
Yes.
As a business person as well as
Yes.
a trainer coach.
I love that challenge, and I never want to convince. I think, all of us, we want to be productive, creative, we want to be happy, we want to be able to connect to others. And I think that happens the easiest when we find a balance between speed and inner calm, right? Speed and inner stability brings up these beautiful qualities, this agility we talk about. But I'm very much with you. I think the scenario we are in is perfectly designed for us to constantly feel a certain pressure, sometimes a fear, a stress, and we are running. It feels sometimes we try to out-robot the robots, but we will be second in class. And our human potential, I think we are able to harness when we find that beautiful balance and we have a connect to that inner dimension, although we are very busy. And there, indeed, the breath comes very, very handy.
So have you seen some amazing real example right in front of you? Somebody, goes through that transformation and you can witness it because you made it happen. Any such story?
It's the participants which make it happen. I cannot do it for anyone.
But have you observed?
Yes, observed. So we have worked, Amita, with about 500,000 senior leaders in the world, in about 50 countries. The
And how many
TLEX
years
team,
did it take?
which we have about 200 TLEX trainers now worldwide, it's more than 35 years. Sri Sri Ravi Shankar has
When
founded.
did you start TLEX?
The idea of TLEX really started with the teaching of Sri Sri Ravi Shankar
Yeah.
45 years ago it is now, And
Art of Living is 45 years. I
Art
was
of
just
Living.
asking about TLEX.
Yes, so and then at some point people were saying, "Oh, it's great that I have the breathing techniques. It's wonderful that maybe my family is learning breathing techniques. Now it would be wonderful if my boss would calm down." And so and that's the challenge we took up, and tailoring these programs really towards the need of corporates. And yeah, over the last 30 years or so, about 500,000 people have learned these techniques, and yes, literally in every program, there are great experiences, because it's something very tangible and reliable, and there's so much science behind it, right?
Oh yes, definitely.
So it happens, but every single situation is really touching. And maybe what touched me most, I wrote 2 books over the last 3 years, which thankfully both have become bestseller #1 in Switzerland and made it on the best-selling list in Germany as well. Thank you.
Congratulations.
And sometimes, in your own family, you're not
You're undervalued.
your teaching doesn't really count. And so what was
I
really
have the same feeling.
so what was really interesting for me is that my father, who is fairly old, or I mean, young and old at the same time, but 80 plus, he suddenly started, and he has difficulties remembering things. So he started to read the book and then called me and said, Christoph, I'm doing a breathing technique. I was very surprised because all these years he wouldn't care too much. And then he said, and I feel more fresh in my mind. I'm remembering better.
Even at the octogenarian stage, 80.
Yeah. And that was a huge benefit. And indeed,
And for you, a big accomplishment.
Yes, and of course, science tells us when we do the breathing techniques, the hippocampus works better, and that's exactly where our memories are stored. And so many leaders, start to feel better. Now, our focus, Amita, has been on helping people to not just appreciate the techniques, but change behavior. And I think, when you do a good training and when you learn to design a training, typically people are excited at the end. But then there's always that delta between, knowing something and doing. That's the difference between
That's a huge
knowledge
gap.
and wisdom. And when senior leaders experience that gap, typically the self-diagnosis is lack of discipline. They would typically say, lack of discipline. But then we need to challenge ourselves and that thinking. How come then you have 4,000 employees, 2 PhDs, you studied so well, and and you have a family? The discipline muscle is there. Why are we applying it on that and not on this?
On health.
That's a more interesting question. Professor Keegan and his team from Harvard has done more than 35 years of research on that topic. And to make it more concrete, they looked into the ability of people to change their behavior when they have a heart disease. Now, in Europe, death cause #1
is a heart attack.
Is the heart problems. So a typical scenario, Amita, is that people come to the doctor, they say, I have a heart problem, and then the doctor would say, thanks God you're here, because within 1 year you would have died. But don't worry, here is the tablets, will you take them? People typically say yes, and you need to change diet and food. Now they wanted to know how many % of the population are actually able to do these 3 things. What would be your guess?
10%.
Exactly, 1 out of 7, 14 point something %. But when the price is your life. And so it cannot be just the discipline muscle, right? Actually, the conclusion is that quite consciously, you put 1 foot on the gas and you want to change and you want to implement. But unconsciously, 1 foot is on the brake. And as long as we don't understand that foot on the leg and what makes us put the foot there, we will have difficulties really changing. And therefore, we have created transformational journeys. We don't just leave it at one program, but we have a beginning, we have a middle part, we have an end. We support people also with coachings, and that's really heartwarming. To make it a little bit more concrete, Amita, so we had, for example, one of the very senior leaders of a DAX company, that's a stock-listed company in Germany, and he said, I feel close to burnout. I want to do the breathing techniques. He loved the breathing techniques in the seminar. But then after 2 weeks, he said, I'm not able to. I'm just not doing it, Christoph. I don't have the discipline. And to prove that lack of discipline, he said, I also wanted to start playing tennis, but guess what? Although my secretary put it in the schedule, booked a coach, bought me a new racket, I'm not doing it. But when we worked a little bit closer, we realized that he has one big fear in his life. And that big fear was not to be a good father. So what happened when he used to come home, immediately he put everything about his personal life to the side and wanted to be a good father. But in that process, he lost all his energy and enthusiasm. So we concluded that if we would have an accident in an airplane, we need to put the oxygen mask first, right? That's what they teach us. So we said, why not when you come home, for your children, for your wife, you go to the cellar, that's where he wanted to do it, you do your 10 minutes of breathing, and you, with that, put on your oxygen mask so that you can serve your children better. From that day onwards, he was able to do it, right? He had to go a little bit deeper. You understand? So that is a very precious journey.
This is the moment I want to know, what technique did you use to get him closer to his own fear and admit it? Because it was so much in the subconscious that he was not even aware. So where did you come in? Is it questioning or is it something else?
It's a mix, you know. The easiest way to change awareness is by changing energy. When energy goes up, awareness goes up. When energy goes down, typically awareness goes down. So then again,
it's sky.
It boils down to breathing techniques, but then also in that space, if we do a coaching session, we start discussing, ask the right question. That can also help us to almost go to the balcony, right? Many times we are almost subject to our own experience. We are so busy, and in that being busy, we kind of lose that perspective on ourselves. We call that the balcony moments, when we start reflecting about ourselves. And we need more of that.
So this gap between knowing and doing, can you tell us more about it?
I think, you know, from your angle, right, as a professor or as a trainer, there are several dimensions. I think more important what somebody tells us is what we tell to ourselves, number one, right? So
now say that again.
More important than what anybody else tells to us is what our own mind tells to ourselves. Yeah. That's the first long journey sometimes. Yeah. But then even if we really want to change our behavior, it's not easy. And that's an interesting piece, because from one angle, if we look, we are all change world champions or Olympic winners, right? I mean, when we were born, you and me as babies, if our parents would not have that set expectation based on the experience on what a humankind can do, what would have been the odds that we would one day walk and talk and then, you know, sitting here to do a podcast? They would have thought impossible, this small creature, but we have transformed in so many ways, quite playfully, to this day and age. So we can do it. But sometimes there are certain unconscious patterns which hold us back. So I would say, and we typically believe in TLEX, that our own consciousness is the ceiling of what we can achieve in our life and as a leader.
With that transformation, and we again come back to internal motivation or inspiration.
Yes.
And that realization has to come from the self.
That's right, yes.
So how challenging it should be for you to get that realization into them as an external support?
You cannot, but you know, all of us, every day we experience the self. We cannot without. We get too tired. We have to connect back to the source. Like a cell phone has to connect back, we also do connect back. And we need, all we can help is to do it more consciously, more often. And it's all a question of, I found, a question of language and you know, terminologies. People are averse to some words, and in the corporate setting it has to be more scientific, more precise. It has to relate to everybody's reality.
Your youth leadership program, or you know, the whole module that you give, shouldn't it be like mandatory in colleges around the world? Because that's where you are training your citizenry.
Would be nice, yes. If I look back at the education I received, it was all about technical skills and almost none about soft skills. Nobody taught me how to manage my emotions, how to sleep better, focus better, be more friendly with kids. Yet today we know that when it comes to professional success, 90%, a global study has shown in 2014, of top performers are high in emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence. and quite reliably, people with high emotional intelligence outperform people with high cognitive intelligence. So, what I find interesting is to see everybody as a young adult in that sense, because for two reasons. One is today we talk about growth mindset. I think when we grow older, many times when we become professionally successful, we kind of protect that sphere of knowingness, that sphere of having accomplished so much, and then we stop being a learner. And when we stop being a learner, we become, let's say, a little bit more stiff from within. Then we cannot fail anymore. And if
But
we don't
that's
fail,
creating stress for yourself.
yes, and of course the professional life is stressful. But if we can maintain a little bit of that sense of still a student of life, then it's easier to develop. And interestingly, today neuroscience science teaches us that our brain develops till we are 70, 80 years, right? If we would have studied back in up to the 1960s or 70s on any of the top universities in this world, we would have been taught that our brain develops till we're about 20 years old, and then at the best we maintain that level of performance. Today we know that's not true. So we just need to stimulate
I was
ourselves.
about to say that's not true anymore. We know much more about the brain
There's
now.
a different paradigm. It might change in the future, but there's a different paradigm, and it's all about remaining curious. I think it's important, and that's what we would like to share with leaders, with employees. That curiosity and that realization that I can always develop, and it's okay to fail. It's important that I stand up.
Yeah. Coming to success and failure and resilience, I think there comes a time when all your focus is so much on success, achievement, that I think we forget the importance of failure. Because our best lessons are from when we failed.
That's right, and I think if we really look to the top of the game, to those who really made it to excellence in their domain, I would say typically these are people who embrace failure, because innovation is only possible if we fail. Right now we have light, and we know that 1,999 times. Yes, it was a failure. And I mentioned I come from Switzerland, and our great tennis champion Roger Federer, who some feel he was the greatest player of all times and one of the greatest athletes. When he retired just recently, he famously, when he received a doctorate at the university, was reflecting on what made him such a great champion, and he concluded it was the way he dealt with failure. And he shared with the global audience that, like if you look at him as a tennis player, he won about 80% of his matches. But a match consists of 100 or 200 points, right? You play across the net. And interestingly, he only won about 54% of all the points ever played. It's a very low percentage, right? So almost every second point he lost. And that's the same for every tennis player. In fact, most of them will only win 53, 52, 51 or less percent. So if every second point you play, you lose, then dealing with failure becomes very important. Then embracing failure becomes very important. And he always took it as an information to further develop. In fact, even when he lost some of the most brutal finals at Wimbledon, in the press conference he used to say, yes, it pains, but I learned a lot. A typical sentence from his used to be, I gained a lot of data. And the newspapers typically would write, he has lost the cutting edge, he's no more a champion. But today we call that a growth mindset. And I think that's vitally important to keep that
mindset.
Yes, to keep a little bit of that lightness of the youth with us when we are doing things which really matter. They do matter. We want to win. I want to win. Sometimes we have to win. But maybe more important is that I would like to evolve. Because guess what? That's not my last game. Many more will follow.
So this also comes to never give up.
Yeah.
Giving up is writing down your own failure, basically.
I think, though, giving up is also important. I mean, I think the question is, sometimes if I look back at my own life, when I had to give up soccer, life showed me very clearly. It took me at least a couple of months, if not 1 or 2 years, till I really gave it up. So sometimes it's important to realize that this is it and you accept life. Life has shown you where to go. But I see, of course, your point. I think believing in ourselves is absolutely the essence of success. And like you do, I have a podcast and I have asked many leaders, what is the key advice you would give to somebody else so that they could have the great career you had? And I would say 9 out of 10 Amita leaders tell me what I would like to share is just do it.
Do it.
Just do it. And the problem is, that sounds great, but we can only do it if we believe in ourselves. And even if the whole world says, Christoph, you are a champ, you can do it, if deep within myself I feel that's not true, I will not be able to use my potential.
So you have to hear your own voice,
Yes.
follow your heart.
Yes.
So you have said you were a banker and you have been a footballer, though for a short while. And then I have the book here, The
Yes.
Writer, Breathe, The Key to Successful and Healthy Leadership. Now, as again, as a linguist,
Yes.
you know, where we talk about collocations.
Yes.
If I read this
Yeah.
until here,
Yeah.
my next predictive word would be relationships.
Yes. Yeah,
So I was like, I stopped in tracks. Oh,
and
leadership.
leadership is also a relationship, right? And I think we cannot have a good relationship with someone else if we don't have a good relationship with ourselves, right? Relationship with the other starts with the sense of I-ness, that I accept myself, then I am more likely to accept others. And so I would say leading others starts with that ability to lead myself. And so this book is about both leading myself as a foundation, then to lead others. And I think leading ourselves is is a lifelong journey. Learning that.
So I would just like to, one of my habits is when I pick up a new book,
Yes.
I open a random page
Cool.
and read.
Yes.
I'm going to do exactly that.
Loving it.
I don't know what the page will contain, but
Yes.
we'll see.
We'll see.
Everything that guides you in your job and personal life is driven by emotions.
Yes.
Nothing, not even the most numbing boredom, can exist without emotions. These chemical substances, formed as a reaction to thoughts and other stimuli, manifest themselves as hormones and neurotransmitters throughout the body, creating finely tuned cascades. Depending on their composition and concentration, they change the heart rate, which in turn alters blood pressure, muscle tension, skin conductance, and bowel activity. This leads not only to mental changes, but also to physiological reactions such as heart palpitations, tightness in the chest, and stomach cramps. One could say that emotions are energy in motion. And if you truly feel the urge to flee, if this overwhelming feeling takes control, then high levels of adrenaline are likely to be released in your body. More blood is supplied to the extremities, your body temperature rises, everything becomes heated, everything quickens, an energy surge of immense power sets in, wanting to be unleashed in annoyance, in anger, in action. So I guess you got a feel of the book and you want to pick up your own copy. I think I'm going to like keeping on reading it. And I want to see what he just said. Healthy leadership cannot happen without healthy relationship with self. Tell us how the idea of writing this book came, and also tell me as a writer, when do you decide to close the book? How difficult is it to not write one more sentence?
Oh, very
because
difficult.
that's very difficult for me in a poem.
I had to learn that the hard way. The publishing house, Campus, very nicely, Madame Hetjens, who is the key editor there told me, Christoph, you have to let it go, the book, let it go.
I thought as much.
Yes, and it feels like a birth. It's a beautiful, beautiful process. It's a beautiful
Tell me
process.
the moment you got into starting the idea that
Yeah.
I have to write.
You know, I have been, Amita, I have been traveling over the last 25 years in my professional capacity to about 50 countries, and sometimes really I started my travel, let's say in Jan, came back in April, May, so a lot of great experiences, but sometimes also experiences that I could not share real time with family because I was on the road in many countries, and so much inspiration. So it was for about 10 years that I was feeling I would like to write this book.
So for 10 years you were holding the book inside you.
I think so, yes. And
That's a long time.
yes, and I did not do, I think because you know, if I look back, I think I wanted to write the perfect book, and if that's the case, you never start in my situation. And as I was actually, now today we are in Oman, I was in Singapore delivering a program, and on the way back in the airplane, you know, on 10,000 meter above the ground, suddenly the airplane started to shake, as it many times does. But this time everybody started screaming, and for a moment I thought I'm going, you know. And then the one thought that came, and I experienced it very consciously, was that Christoph, you did not write your book. And the next thought was a thought almost of guilt, because what a selfish thought, and of course my family, etc. But that was a thought quite real. And when I survived that moment, I thought, let me take that serious. It's really a very deep wish. I was aware of that, but not to that extent. I also got myself some help. I did a workshop first to kind of understand my own wish to write a book, and it was wonderful. And I'll write more books. It was a great process, and of course it was wonderful that it was so well received. And I think it touches a very important point, and that is the point of ourselves, keeping in touch with the core of who we are, even in the most dynamic environments that we put ourselves in, exactly to be the best version of ourselves.
In that situation.
In that situation, because I think many a times, exactly, see, like you and me, we sit now in an interview, and the more important it is for us, this situation, the more we want to be very good, the more are the chances, the higher the chances that we get slightly stressed, and because we are stressed, unfortunately, we cannot use our actual potential. And so it happens that in many of us, we have experienced that in the most crucial moments of our life, we didn't live up to our potential. And that's a dilemma, right? So how can I develop, I call that playing the potential in the book. Playing our potential means, how can I remain centered when it really matters?
When it truly will make a difference.
When it truly, yes. And that has a lot to do with both self-management skill, but also perspectives to life. I think maybe that's what I would wish everyone of us now listening to this podcast or reading the book, that we get in touch with ourselves and realize what is important, what matters to us, and kind of start expressing that, because we are all unique and there's something beautiful in all of us.
Coming to reading and, updating ourselves all the time, because reading is the only way to feed your brain with new ideas.
And we are saying that while we are producing a podcast.
Yes. But as you say this, I'm thinking of my visually impaired students,
yes,
who do all their reading through the listing.
Yes. Yes.
So,
yeah.
Maybe we are not writing a book as we talk, but we are saying important things which people may not be reading but listen to.
That's right. Yeah.
Now what I want to know is, let's go to the present digital overload of reading.
Yes.
We are in an age of too much information.
We are. Yes.
And with too much information, now we have this whole big artificial intelligence. Tools that will do a summary for you, tools that will read the book in 10 minutes for you and tell you the content of the book. You don't know which sentence in the book is written for me.
Yeah.
There have been books where I have stopped at page 33 because that sentence hit so hard that I thought I got what I wanted from that book. And then I left it on the shelf for a while and I went back to it when I was
Yeah.
again ready. But this whole process of speeding up reading, giving it to you in, bullet points. As a teacher, that horrifies me because you have to read the original version.
Very true.
How do you think is digital overload to be balanced, and what should we do about digital detox? Because our brain span, our attention, as Guruji said, 30 seconds has become our attention span.
That's right.
I see that in our students.
Yeah. I mean, the digital lifestyle and has definitely changed the way we remember, has changed our attention span. It's true. There is a meta study, a study on the most important studies on attention span at work, and it is found that back in 2004, that's about when Facebook comes to life, the average attention span of an employee was 150 seconds, and you would say that's not much, right? In 10 minutes, your colleagues basically 3 times mentally go and take a coffee break. That's not what you pay your people for. That's not why you sit at the computer. But then quite linear, it goes down, and today we are at these 40 or 30 seconds. We can keep attention, and therefore it has become more difficult to read books, really, for many of us. But I think it impacts many aspects of our life. I think the relationship, connection works through presence. Empathy works through presence. Creativity is connected to presence. Happiness is connected to presence.
In fact,
and so digital detox, definitely a good idea. What we typically say at TLEX, and I think that's super important for anyone wanting to use their full potential, also for most senior levels of leadership, is that 2 things we need to do. One is strengthening what we call the presence muscle.
be in the present moment.
Yes, and we can now conclude that attention span has reduced, but can we do something about it? On the physical level, we have all concluded I can do something. Yeah, if I don't have a 6-pack, I go to the 6, or if I want to have one, rather, not everybody wants it, but if I want to have a fit body, I go to the fitness studio and I train. But on the mental level, that's the same thing. I can train myself to be more absent or to be more present. So training the presence muscle would be vitally important, and there's nothing better, and we are back to it, than you doing breathing.
Meditation.
Yes, in particular breathing techniques, because the breath is always in the present. I cannot say now I'm so busy, I will breathe after the podcast. It doesn't work. The breath is there. So by bringing the attention to the breath or the body, which are both in the present moment, that mind which goes to future or past, worries or kind of
Oscillates.
anticipates, yes, comes also to the present. And that makes me more resilient. So the breath, very powerful. I think it's so good that we have the sky breathing technique. I think it's the most powerful, designed by Sri Sri Ravi Shankar. And we could also then create what we call brain-friendly structures. We need to be very mindful about the way we structure our day, and yes, maybe digital-free mornings or whatever else we can do to kind of avoid multitasking will help us a great way.
Because I see absolute addiction to the phone among my students.
Yes.
Now I have a set rule: if you can't control yourself, the phone remains on the teacher's table until the class is over. That want to every student on.
And if the teacher has a headache, guess what happens to the students? But it's a challenge, and I think I'm totally with you. We need to bring these techniques to the classroom. I think it will be good to do breathing techniques or whatever else. It's not about meditation or breathing techniques. It's not about the technique. It's about the effect. Whatever helps us to be present, fully present, is what we need to focus on, and then we can really absorb the beauty of a knowledge. And that's what we want to do moving forward. Yes, making good decisions. So nice. Yeah.
Now, I have a question. From all the roles you play, the CEO, the writer, the coach, and anything else I don't know, if you were to shed them all, who is Christoph? So
And
what are you then? Who are you within? Who's the one person with the center?
you know, I don't know, Amita, whether you have had this experience. Sometimes you look into the mirror, you realize, oh, I'm getting older, but then you also feel something in me has not changed at all. There's something in me that still feels young, like ever, and I would say that's the true me, right? That's that vibration, that being that I truly am.
That spark.
That spark, yes.
So we have talked about so many things, Christoph, and we have tried to touch things, and it's been a wonderful conversation where even I got to share a lot myself,
Yes,
and
thank you
it's
for that.
always
Thank you for
because
that.
of how
Yeah.
the conversation goes to and fro. I wish you all the very best for the book, and hope we'll meet again. Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Thanks for your sharing as well. And very grateful for this conversation. And I am so grateful for having had the chance to learn all these techniques, the breathing techniques, discovering those through the teaching also of Sri Sri, and then looking forward to share it with the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening, and hope you carry a lot of things from this talk in your personal lives, especially digital detox and time management. Thank you.
All the best.